Today we're going to be working on evaluating trig functions without using a calculator. I'm going to be doing the majority of the even ones. If you would like to try the odd ones to practice on your own, I'll show the answer key here in a moment. And there you go. So now let's take a look. So if we have sine of negative pi over 4, when we have a negative number, that just means that we are going clockwise on the graph or on your unit circle. So typically, if we usually have this pi over 4 going from 0 into this value, your sine function, or pi over 4 has the coordinate of root 2 over 2. Oops, 2 over 2, which if you haven't seen the video yet on how to find these coordinates, please do so. It should be in a previous video. So if we're talking about this being in the first quadrant, if we look at having this negative counterpart, that just means that we are down below here in the fourth quadrant. So we dip down below here to now get the negative pi over 4, in which case we have still the same point, but in the fourth quadrant, which value is going to be negative? Well, in the fourth quadrant, we have a negative y and a positive x, meaning that if we're evaluating your sine is your y value. So that just means that our number, or our answer, would be equal to negative root 2 over 2. Now let's do the same for a tangent of 45 degrees. Now I'm going to convert these degrees into radians. So a 45 degree is actually going to be the pi over 4 value we were talking about. Now because it is positive and located in the first quadrant, so this is pi over 4. Again, we're dealing with that value of root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2, x and y, or cosine and your sine value. Now to understand tangent is y over x, or sine over your cosine, meaning that we are going to be taking these coordinates, this being your sine value or your y value, and the other being your cosine value or your x value. Now, when you have the same number over itself, it's equal to 1. So the tangent of 45 degrees is 1. Now we have cosine of negative 3 pi over 4. Now because it is negative, we are going to be going in the clockwise motion. So there's many different ways of figuring out where this is located. One such way that I like to do is understanding that, okay, well, if we have the number 3, right, let's sandwich this 3 on either side. So what is one number that is directly less than 3 and directly above 3? Well, that would be negative 2 pi over 4. Negative 3 pi over 4 is the middle. And then negative 4 pi over 4. Now, what do we know about negative 4 pi over 4? Well, that's just a negative pi amount. And negative 2 pi over 4 is just negative pi over 2. Now, do we understand where negative pi over 2 and negative pi is located? Well, that would be located over here. This would be your negative pi, and this would be negative pi over 2. And because we are between these two values, our negative 3 must be located in between these 2 points. So this whole angle here is negative 3 pi over 4 amount. So this angle here is negative 3 pi over 4. Now its reference angle, so what do we know about the first quadrant that we can apply to this third quadrant? Well, if we just take the reference angle of pi over 4, just eliminate your numerator. So this is pi over 4, which has the coordinate of root 2 over 2 and root 2 over 2. Now this is the first quadrant, and we're going to take that same point and apply it to the third quadrant, in which case we have a negative x value and a negative y value. And we're being specifically asked for your cosine, meaning your y value or your x value. So our answer should be negative root 2 over 2. Now let's move on to cotangent. So cotangent is just 1 over your tangent, meaning that we can take your coordinate, whatever it comes out to be, and evaluate at 1 over tangent. And keep in mind, if tangent is sine over cosine, or 1 over sine over cosine, we're going to take this and flip it upside down. So we'll evaluate cosine over sine, or x over y. So now let's try the same thing, trying to figure out where 4 pi over 3 is. Now this is a positive number, so we are going to be going in the counterclockwise motion. So 4 pi over 3, if we were to sandwich it again, maybe I take this and throw it over here. So if we do the same thing and take one value below 4 pi over 3 and one value above 5 pi over 3, oops, right? One of these should give us a good indicator as to where it's located. Now 3 pi over 3 is just pi, and 5 pi over 3 must be a little bit further away from pi. Now if this second one does not give you much context, we can use one of them. So where is pi located? Well, pi is located right here. This is pi, or 3 pi over 3. Now, taking a look at your numerator, if we're greater than that number and we're traveling clockwise or counterclockwise, that just means that we are now a little bit more in your numerator. So going around this value, this must be 4 pi over 3. Now, if we wanted to, we can also assess 6 pi over 3, which is just another way to say 2 pi, and 2 pi being all the way over here. So when we talk about just being a little bit less, so 5 pi over 3 must be somewhere over here, which again doesn't give us a whole lot of usefulness. So if, unlike the one above, gave us lots of context, one of these values should give us a little bit of an idea of where we should be. Now, if it was 2 pi over, no, I won't even say that. So now that we know that it is located in the third quadrant, we can use its reference angle. So the angle from the first quadrant that we would use would be pi over 3. So this pi over 3 amount, so this is 4 pi over 3, but this pi over 3 amount must be the same as the degree right here. So if we went pi over 3, well, pi over 3 gives us the coordinate of 1/2 and root 3 over 2. And its counterpart over here, where we have a negative x and a negative y. And we look at your cotangent. Well, we just said cotangent is cosine over sine, so negative 1 over 2 over negative root 3 over 2. The negatives are going to cancel, and now we have a fraction over fraction. So we're going to take your bottom fraction and flip it upside down. That allows us to cancel out those 2's, and you're left with 1 over root 3. Now we do need to rationalize, meaning we need to multiply the denominator by itself. So we should get root 3 over 3. Now let's do the same with number 10. So the cotangent of negative 90 degrees. So negative 90 degrees is just another way to say negative pi over 2. So negative pi over 2, if we're talking about going in the clockwise motion, if that is just a 90 degrees or a pi over 2, we're just going to be going over here, pi over 2. This has the coordinate of 0, negative 1. And if we're asked to find your cotangent, so cotangent we talked about before is your x value over your y value. So cotangent of 0 over negative 1, well, this is just 0. Let me erase to give myself just a smidge more room. Now let's take a look at sine of 11 pi over 6. So same idea as before, maybe we do 10 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6, and 12 pi over 6. Well, 12 pi over 6 is just another way to say 2 pi, and 10 pi over 6, if we were to reduce, taking away the 2's is just 5 pi over 3. So we might not know where 5 pi over 3 is, but we do know where 2 pi is. Now this is 2 pi here, or in our case, if we rewrote it to have a denominator of 6, right? Our numerator is a little bit more than the, our numerator of 11 is less than this 12, meaning that we haven't achieved this full rotation, meaning that we've only come just a little bit away from that full rotation. So we're working with the fourth quadrant. So rotating around, and again, if we had a negative, it would be the reverse going around this way. So if this is 11 pi over 6, this total amount here, our reference angle from the first quadrant would be pi over 6. So this amount here is equal to the amount over here. So your reference angle of pi over 6 would be root 3 over 2 and 1/2. So that must mean this one is the same, root 3 over 2 and 1/2. The only difference is that now we have a positive x and a negative y. So if we're looking for the sine value, we're looking for your y value. So sine of 11 pi over 6 is equal to negative 1/2. Let's do it again with cotangent of 5 pi over, or negative 5 pi over 4. Now I'm going to hope that you are going to pause the video. I'll just do a few more. When we wrap this video, I'll show you a different way to encounter some of these values. If you don't like the way that we're doing it, where we're kind of sandwiching values. So perhaps after the next 3, I'll show you what we can do as far as a different method. So if we have cotangent of negative 5 pi over 4, so negative 5 pi over 4, if we went to negative 4 pi over 4, negative 5 pi over 4, and let's see, 6 pi over 4. This can reduce to negative 3 pi over 2. This can reduce to just negative pi. So locating your negative 4 pi, or sorry, negative 5 pi over 4, well, negative pi is over here going again in this clockwise motion. And negative 3 pi over 2 would be up here. So we are an angle that are between these two values. So this value, this thing in blue here is negative 5 pi over 4. And your reference angle is pi over 4. So we're using your root 2 over 2 values. So we have root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2, and we're looking at a negative x but a positive y. And now we want to evaluate your cotangent, which your cotangent is just x over y. So negative root 2 over 2 all over positive root 2 over 2, meaning that we have negative 1. Now let's evaluate cosine of negative 180. Well, negative 180 is just another way to say negative pi. So we are having that negative, meaning that we are going in that clockwise rotation. So we now are at negative pi. This is the negative pi. And we have the coordinate of negative 1, 0. We're asked for your cosine value, meaning we want your x value. Let's do it again for a few more. And then on your remaining, I'll show you just a different way to encounter these as well. Maybe you wanted a different method. So 2 pi over 3. So if we went 1 below, we have 1 pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, and 3 pi over 3. And these are all negatives. We can figure out your angle here by that sandwiching. Well, 1 pi over 3 is reduced, or 3 pi over 3 is just negative pi. So negative pi is right here. Pi over 3, or sorry, 1 pi over 3 is right here. Oh, actually, from the negative half is over here. So negative right here. Oops, negative pi over 3. And we are a value that is between these two angles, which means we are in that third quadrant. We're over here in negative 2 pi over 3. So negative 2 pi over 3, again, we just are one less than your pi, one less than the 3. So that just means that we have to dip down. If we are more than 3 pi over 3, so at 4 pi over 3, then we would go above this amount. Now your reference angle here at pi over 3, we're dealing with the coordinate of 1/2 in root 3 over 2. So that just means we are at negative 1/2 and negative root 3 over 2. And we are asked for your cosine value, so your x value. So one more time, we are at negative 1/2. Now on these remaining, let's see a different method. So this is a new method. Perhaps I should have done it from starting at 12 and down, but we got a few remaining that are pretty neat. So if we have any sort of value that is not located within your first quad or within your first, what is that called? Your first full rotation, we can start to add or subtract by a 2 pi amount. 2 pi meaning your full unit circle, your full circumference. Now, if it is negative, that means we want to add by a 2 pi amount. So pi over 2, negative pi over 2 plus 2 pi, meaning that we have negative pi over 2 plus 4 pi over 2 means that we are at 3 pi over 2. So taking 3 pi over 2, what we know from your unit circle, 3 pi over 2 is located down here. So 3 pi over 2, or here, which is the negative counterpart, we're at the term, or we're at the coordinate of 0, negative 1. Now tangent, we're talking about y over x or sine over cosine. So we take a look at negative 1 over 0, which is then undefined. Now let's try it again with 1050. So we're going to take 1050 and because it's in degrees, we are then going to subtract instead of 2 pi, we're going to subtract 360. So let's subtract 360. So 1050 minus 360. And we're going to subtract here because this is a degree that is more than 360. And what we're trying to do, because they've rotated around your unit circle too many times, we now need to take it away to try and get a degree measure between 0 and 360 amount. So that will give us 690 degrees, which again is still too much. It is not found within one full revolution of your unit circle. So subtract 360 again, we're at 330. So 330 is on your unit circle from that revolution. So we have rotated about your unit circle and we're just off by a little degree. So if this is 360 here, and this is now 330, we have just 30 more degrees to then go off of. So our reference angle, if we were to do 30 degrees, well, 30 degrees, that is pi over 6, which gives us the coordinate of root 3 over 2 and 1/2, meaning that we can take that same point over here and now change it so that we have a negative y and a positive x. Oops. And if we're looking for your cosine, that just means your x value. So we are looking at the answer of root 3 over 2. Now let's do it again with negative 3 pi over 4. So it being negative, we're going to add 2 pi. So we get negative 3 pi over 4 plus 8 pi over 4. So we're now at 5 pi over 4. Well, 5 pi over 4 is just a little bit more than your pi. So again, if at this point you want to take those two methods as well and kind of sandwich them, 4 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, and 6 pi over 4, right? This being your pi or 5 pi over 4. We're now taking your reference angle of pi over 4, which is root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2, and applying it over here, where they're both negative. We now want your cosecant. Cosecant is 1 over sine, meaning that we are taking your y value and saying that this is really negative 1, well, 1 over negative root 2 over 2. So if we flip it upside down, it's 2 over root 2, or just root 2. To kind of show that part, when you multiply by itself, you get negative 2 root 2 over 2. So that cancels and you're left with negative root 2. Let's try it again with sine of 240. I'm running out of room a little bit. 240 is already located between 0 and 360. So if this is 180, and this is 0, and again 360, and this is 270 degrees, 240 is just a little bit over here. So 240 degrees being right here. Our reference angle, we always want to go up. So we want to take 240 minus 180. So 240 minus 180 is 60 degrees. So that being said, your reference angle here, having also a 60-degree angle, or pi over 3, has the measure of, or has the coordinate of 1/2 and root 3 over 2. So this having the same 1/2 and root 3 over 2, but they are both negative. We're looking for your sine value, which sine is your y value. So we're at negative root 3 over 2. Let's try it again for the remaining. Again, notice that you have a negative amount. So if we want, if we're trying to apply your new rule, we want to add by 2 pi here. So negative 31 pi over 6 plus 12 pi over 6. So 31 minus, or sorry, 12 minus 31 is 19 pi. That's negative 19 pi over 6. It's still negative, so we're going to add another 12 pi over 6. So 19, negative 19 plus 12 is a negative 7 pi over 6. So let's add another 12 pi over 6. So that should get us 5 pi over 6. So add those together. So we now have to look for 5 pi over 6 on your unit circle. So 5 pi over 6 is just a little bit less than, just a little bit less than 5 pi over 6, or 5 pi over 6 is a little bit less than 6 pi over 6. 6 pi over 6 is just another way to say pi. So we are at 5 pi over 6. Your reference angle here at pi over 6 is root 3 over 2 and 1/2. So ours being a negative x and a positive y, and we're looking at cosecant, which is 1 over your sine value. So 1 over 1/2, which is equal to 2. Let's see. We'll do one more. So same thing here. We can add 360 degrees. So 360 minus 930 is negative 570. Add another 360 degrees. We are at negative 210. Add another 360. We are at 150. So on here, if this is 180 degrees here and this is 90, we are at 150 degrees here. And so again, your reference angle is always from your unit, from your x axis to this amount. So we're going to take 180 minus 150. which will be 30. So we have a 30. Oh, and I just realized I made a mistake back here. 30 degrees is pi over 6. Because I think the other one was that supposed to be 60 degrees. Nope, actually no mistake. So that's pi over 6. So root 3 over 2 and 1/2. We want your x to be negative, y to be positive. So we're looking at a negative root 3 over 2. So hopefully that video was informative. You got lots of different ways to figure out your location of each trig value. And let's take a look if I can add any sort of tidbits to it. If you wanted to see just a couple on, so perhaps I take 28 and redo it, but with the old method. So one above is 32 pi over 6, and one below is negative 30 pi over 6. Well, negative 30 pi is really negative 5 pi, which means negative 5 pi. If it's an odd number, it's going to be on this side. If it's an even number, it's on this side. So pi versus 2 pi, 3 pi versus 4 pi, and so forth. So if we are one less traveling around in the clockwise motion, right? We're at 31, it was at 30. So that means we are up here in your third or second quadrant, which does match with, where did we go? Over here as well. Over here as well. There we go.